Okay, so we spent several weeks talking about the creation of the heaven or the heavenlies, and today we're going to start talking about the creation of the earth. Now, the earth is important to us because it's our home, and it's the only home that we have known. It's the only home we will know until Jesus comes or we pass away. But the earth today is our home, and it's a beautiful place in many respects, and it's an ugly place in other respects. And as all of you in this room are old enough to realize that I say that it's ugly because I know in your lifetime you've seen how more and more evil there is with the passing of time. And that bothers all of us because we have given our lives to the Lord, and we know that the source of evil is the enemy. God's enemy is our enemy, and our enemy is God's enemy. And so we definitely, I love the world, but I'm becoming less and less attached to it as time goes on because it's changing in ways that I don't particularly agree with. I mention here about the shape of the earth because there is a noisy element out there today, and if you're on the internet, I'm sure you probably heard of them. They're called flat earthers, and they believe that the earth is flat, which is to me rather ridiculous, but they're that way. At the last space shot, you know, the one that went around the moon and came back last month, I watched the broadcast by the flat earthers. They had their commentary on that, and I did it just because I don't know. I just did it, and you know, every time they made a cut there. See, NASA's trying to fool you. They spliced it right there, and all that kind of nonsense. But you know. I don't, these men don't believe that men ever went to the moon, so therefore anything that we'd say about seeing the earth from the moon being a sphere is wrong. But the Bible tells us that the earth is round, and I believe the Bible. And so I want to give you a couple verses here. King Solomon wrote Proverbs 8:27, when he established, he meaning Yahweh, established the heavens, I was there. When he inscribed a circle on the face of the deep, when he made firm the skies above. So he used the word circle here. He called the world a circle. And Isaiah said in Isaiah 40, verse 22, he, Yahweh, sits enthroned above the circle of the earth. Now, same Hebrew word, translated English, circle, both verses, and it means a sphere. It means round. So God said the earth is round. And so flat earthers, you're wrong, okay, because I accept God's word on that. I do believe that we have been in space and we have seen a round earth. I do believe it is round for a variety of other reasons, but the shape of the earth is round. Now, let's examine God's activity on each day of the creative week. Day one, the creation of light. Genesis 1 and verse 2. Someone want to read that?
And the earth was formless and empty. Darkness was over the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the waters.
Okay. So we find here several things that I think are important. First of all, he calls the earth formless, and which means a desolate place, a wasteland, and empty. And empty just simply means empty. There was just nothing on the earth. It didn't have the form that it has now. There was just nothing there. It's the earth at the beginning, not the end. So God created the earth as we know it in stages, and the first stage was here that it was without any form. It was literally empty. It was devoid of inhabitants. It was a lifeless and barren place. Now in your notes, I mentioned, I think they're the gap theory, and you can read that if you want to read that. But as I've made clear, those who believe in evolution have to place it in two places. They have to place it between Genesis 1:1 and 1:2. They say there's a gap there of time. That's where millions of years go in. Or they change the word day, which I've already dealt with in one lesson. They make day not a 24-hour period of time, but they expand it into millions of years of time. And so I'm tired of talking about evolution, to be honest with you. I am ready to move forward. My problem probably is that I've read several books recently, and I've just gotten tired of it. I've just gotten tired of the misrepresentations, mischaracterizations, the denial, the misinterpretations of God's word. And I'm talking about evolutionists who claim to be believers. And so I'm moving on. If you want to read that, then I put it there for your benefit. So my next point is water everywhere. At this point in the creative process, there was no land. The earth was covered with water. Both the Old Testament and the New Testament teach that was the beginning. In the beginning, the earth was originally covered with water. Now, this contradicts macroevolutionists. Okay, those are the guys that believe life comes from non-life, because they say the earth was originally a hot, molten blob without any water. Well, I choose to believe God. The world was originally covered in water, and the same water in the beginning is the same water that God judged the world with in the flood of Noah, and the same water that we swim in at the beach. It's water. And so the entire globe was covered in water, and dry land did not appear until the third day. So it's just a ball of water. That's where we are, okay? So that's the way God started, a ball of water. And which is also interesting, because scientists are looking for water on other planets. And that they're searching for life, they're searching for water, because they know that if you have water, there's a possibility of life. And so what does scientists say? Our body's 75% or so water, something like that. Some of you guys know more than I do. But it's a lot of our bodies is really water. So we know that water gives life, and so that's why they're looking for water on other planets. And anyway, that doesn't mean there's life. It just means there might be the possibility. Dark, mommy, dark. Genesis 1, 2-5. Someone want to read out the notes for that?
Darkness was over the surface of the deep, and God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. God saw the light was good, and he separated the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And there was evening, and there was morning the first day.
Thank you. So in the initial stage of creation, God says that darkness was covering the world here, and there was no light, no sun, no moon, no stars, and darkness was, when I grew up, we talk about being so dark you couldn't see your hand in front of your face, and that's the kind of dark it was, because there was no light. And basically, darkness means the absence of light. Cold is the absence of heat, so on. And so darkness is just the absence of light is the meaning. And so there was no light, there was darkness. Now Moses actually describes God's creation of light. And I confess these verses are confusing, but I hope I can make some sense out of it. First of all, I want to state what I know for sure. This verse is not describing the creation of the sun, the moon, and the stars. That light did not come from the sun, the moon, or the stars. And I know that because the Bible specifically says they were created on day 4. So whatever this light is, it's not the sun, the moon, or stars. We okay? All right. So, and besides that, the sun is not needed for day and night because what's needed for day and night is just the light source and the earth turning. And so if you've got day and night here, we know that Earth, this ball of water, is rotating. It's rotating. And that's how you get the day and night cycles. So this is where all of the 24-hour day and night started. Number 2, this is what I know. I've read some people say, well, this is the light, the Shekinah glory of God shining from heaven itself. I don't believe that. But they'll quote Revelation 22:5. It's talk about heaven. There'll be no more night. They'll not need the light of a lamp or the light of the sun, for the Lord God will give them light. I cannot accept this interpretation because Genesis tells us God created this light. So there was a time it did not exist, and then when it began to exist, and I believe that God's light, his glory, has been shining forever. So I don't think it's that either. Okay, everybody still with me here? All right, because the key word is created. And God has had this light for eternity. All right, and the Bible even calls him an infinite being of light in the scriptures. So, what I do believe, though, that this light is the first stage of the creation of a general light and only a temporary solution until the specific and permanent lights, the sun and the moon and the stars, were created on day 4. So we're not told what this light source was. It's only a temporary light source because we know in day 4 that we have the sun and the moon and the stars giving us light. So that's all we know. And anything beyond that is just a man, what's the word I'm looking for?
Conjecture?
I'm sorry?
Conjecture?
Conjecture, good word. That's what I wanted, conjecture. And I tend not to go that direction. So it's an undefined light source that was only temporary. What it was, I don't know. Where it came from, had to come from above to shine down on the earth. So, that's all I know. All right? Everybody all right? Okay. So the periods of darkness, the period of evening and morning indicate the earth is now spinning on its axis. And the statement, and there was evening and there was morning the first day, indicates once again to me the days of creation are 24-hour solar days. To me, that is so clear. Not obvious to everybody, but to me it is. So the first day of the creative week, God created light. All right, questions, comments? Okay, I'll keep moving. Do you realize that we have covered 5 verses? All right. Guys are listening faster. All right. Day 2, the separating of the waters. Genesis 1, 6 through 8. Somebody want to read those 3 verses for us, please?
And God said, let there be a vault between the waters to separate water from water. So God made the vault and separated the water under the vault from the water above it. And it was so. God called the vault sky, and there was evening and there was morning the second day.
Okay, thank you. All right, so basically, God separates water, and he puts in between it what we would call the sky, or we could call it space. So we've got water on the earth, you got an atmosphere, a sky, and then there's water above.
Is that what my version calls the vault?
Yeah, I've never seen that before.
What version is that?
It says New International Version.
Well, that may be the 2011. I'm old-fashioned. I still use the 84 version. But it's not far off from the meaning, if that's because if you understand a vault as something that holds something in safekeeping, and it is, that water is above. Now, the water, you've got the sky above the oceans and the seas, and you got the outer space where the sun and moon and stars are located. And so basically, you've got water on the earth, you've got water above, and even it's interesting that scientists believe that there's water somewhere in the somewhere in outer space. But I don't understand everything. I probably should about this, but there is water above the edge of outer space is what the text indicates. And the psalmist said in Psalm 148 that there is still water above the heavens where the sun and the moon are located. So there's water up there. But Job's even said the same thing, that there were waters above. If you're interested in astronomy, study the book of Job, because there's quite a few different references to what we would call the field of astronomy, and Job mentions that there's water above also. So what happened on day 2 was God created a space, the sky, the atmosphere that we live in, and I believe that's when he created oxygen and carbon dioxide, because both are essential to life. Now, oxygen and carbon dioxide do not rise like a gas, a helium gas or something that will rise. They are held in place by gravity. That's why there's always oxygen and always carbon dioxide around the earth, because gravity holds those microscopic particles of oxygen and carbon dioxide. Thank God they do, because it's like a leak in your tire. Eventually it's going to go flat, and we wouldn't have any oxygen to breathe. Yes, sir.
Is this what is known as the firmament?
Yes, the firmament. Does King James use that? Yeah, I think so.
Canopy around
That's
the
it.
globe.
Yep, exactly. That's a good word, firmament. I haven't used King James in years, but I thought that was the word I remembered for that. So it's interesting to note what Peter said in 2 Peter 3:5. Long ago, by God's words, the heavens existed, and the earth was formed out of water and by water. So there's a whole lot of references to water concerning the creation of the world. And so again, this is contrary to what macroevolutionists say when they said it's a molten blob of lava, and that's not what the Bible says. The waters above would play an important part in the flood of Noah. So the fountains of the deep, remember, they burst forth, and then then the waters in the heaven were released, and it would take, in 40 days, to cover the earth with water. It would take a lot of water. So this water is going to be important later on, and that water is probably still in existence up there somewhere, because, like I said, the last references that we have to it is that it's there 1,000 years before Christ, it was said. So that's about all I know about that. And the waters above are there because God placed them there, and they would definitely form an important part of the flood of Noah. Now, notice at the end of day 2, he does not say that it was good. Notice, and there was evening, there was the morning, the second day, period, stops, end of discussion. This is the only day of the 6 creative days that God did not say that it was good. And by good, God means beneficial for mankind. So what was done on day 2 was really not beneficial to mankind. So he does not call it good. So you will find that all the other days he says it's good because it was something for the good of mankind. And so I think that's an important point here, is this just part of the creation, but it was not necessary for man's life. All right, day 3. Now things get a little easier. The dry land appeared and the plant life was created. Verses 9 to 13. Someone want to read that to us?
And God said, let the waters under the heavens be gathered together into one place, and let the dry land appear, and it was so. And God called the dry land earth, and the gathering together of the waters called he seas. And God saw that it was good. And God said, let the earth bring forth grass, the herb yielding seed, and the fruit tree yielding its fruit after its kind, whose seed is in itself upon the earth, and it was so.
Okay, so on day 3, there's 2 distinct acts of a creation. First was the separation of the dry land from the seas. Now this is important because we live on the dry land. And so the land was divided in such a way that there were multiple distinct bodies of water. We call seas, plural. Seas, plural. Now, I personally believe that when we come to just after the flood of Noah in Genesis 9, we're going to find that the earth is going to be divided. And so that's why it looks like South America and Africa fit together, because they probably did at one time. So the flood actually changed the land mass, where it may have been one mass at this time, and then the flood made multiple masses and became the continents, the 7 continents that we know today. So, and even evolutionists believe that, they believe that the separating of the continents. So it's, I think, scientific, but it's more importantly, it's biblical. Now, so I think before the flood of Noah, there was really only one continent on planet Earth, and then the land was divided in such a way that we do have continents. Now, someone may ask, were both freshwater and saltwater bodies created on day 3? My inclination is to say yes, but the oceans and the seas could not have been as salty as they are today. We understand that the sea is salty because fresh water from rains falls on the earth. I'm thinking about the slope of the mountains runs water into rivers, and rivers run into the sea, but the salt comes off the earth and is dumped into the sea. Now, it's interesting that scientists can tell you how much salt is going into the seas and how much salt is coming out of the seas at any given year. So if the salt water was created, it would not have been as salty as it is today. And secondly, if the seas, if the earth were millions of years old, the seas would be so salty that there could be no marine life to function in the sea. So once again, that's one of the reasons I don't believe in millions of years of creation, is because the seas would be so salty it would kill all the marine life. So, but if it's really 6,000 years or so old, then we have no problem. It's millions of years of salt being dumped into the sea. That does not compute in my mind. It's not logical.
So it stops at the sea.
I'm sorry?
Everything stops at the sea.
Yes.
So that's the reason the fresh water isn't salty, because it all runs to the sea. That's amazing.
Yeah, I tell you what, you want to get me talking about something amazing. It's this whole hydrological cycle, which how the salt water evaporates out of the sea up into the clouds. Somehow the salt is all taken out of it. Somehow these clouds that there's nothing to them, no substance. You walk through fog 100 times, 1,000 times in your life, but yet it holds this water. And water's, was it 7-8 pounds a gallon? How much is it? You guys are smart.
About 8 pounds.
8 pounds. 8 pounds a gallon, and it's dumping hundreds of thousands of gallons of water over the land as the wind blows the clouds. And yet the clouds don't fall. They're up there holding this, and they don't dump all of the water at once. It's dropped a little at a time, sometimes a little too much, but it's not like you're dumping it out. You know what I'm saying? But it comes down. It can come down with a sprinkle. It can come down with a medium shower. It can come down like a tropical storm. But, and then the process starts all over again. It's the craziest thing. I mean, how could that be? And where does all that salt go that was taken out of the ocean? I don't know. But they don't either. Isn't that crazy how God could do that?
To our body and our tears.
Yeah.
Your tears are salty.
Salty.
So there's
I
We're
know.
the salt of the earth.
yeah. The saltier you are, is the saltier, the saltier tears.
My understanding is that the ocean water is salty, and that evaporates, right?
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't evaporate the salt, correct?
I don't know. I don't know the answer to that
So
question.
what evaporates is fresh, and that gets dumped from the clouds.
Okay,
So
I'll
the
look.
salt doesn't go to the clouds; it stays within the sea.
Now, when you boil salt water,
That makes
salt
sense.
stays behind in the pot.
It makes sense to me. But I don't know how any of that works.
Well, I know when I'm mowing the grass and I'm wearing my hat, I have a white ring around
Yeah.
from all the sweat that I've come out, and that salt is right there.
Yeah.
So
You know right where that goes, huh?
it stays on the hat as a badge of honor.
No, I think
It said when you boil water, the salt stays.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, in Curacao, we walked
I
on
was gonna
salt.
say, we had the salt mines in Curacao, like that, when the ocean waters receded.
yeah, that's right.
It looked like snow that you could just walk across,
yeah.
but it was all
It's
salt.
all just
Salt.
solid salt.
Wow.
Yep.
They mined it.
They still do that today.
Yeah, yeah.
Like the most expensive salt you can buy is from the, I can't remember what sea it is in the Mediterranean, but
The Dead Sea.
yeah, they harvest that salt. You can buy it. It's extremely expensive. It's the
And
first-
extremely salty,
yeah,
very more so.
yeah.
Yeah. And where John David Smith was missionary for a dozen years, Cape Verde Islands, they mine salt. And where I'm from in Kansas, they have deep salt mines, and they store a lot of stuff in there. So, you know, when they talk about the reserves, gasoline reserves that our country has, they're in these huge bladders that are stored in salt mines in Kansas and other places below ground. And yeah, well, how'd that salt get there? Well, I think it was because the water was there, and it not there now, but it left the salt behind. So anyway, all right, good. Thanks, Dick. All right, so then the second creative act on day 3 was the furnishing of the dry land with grass, bushes, and fruit trees. Now, this is the first act of God creating what we might call living things. Both acts are called good. That is the separating of the land from the water and the creation of the grass, bushes, and trees, because they're beneficial for mankind. Man needs these things. Moses only mentioned one type of plants and trees here. He called them seed-bearing plants and trees on the land. Those he mentioned were because those are for man's benefit. Man needs the vegetables, man needs the fruit from the trees, and man uses the trees for shelter and a million other things that make life easier. So it was all created for man's benefit. That's why it ends there in verse 12, and God saw that it was good. Now, my important point here is that these were not seeds, these were fully mature plants. And that's what he's saying here. Plants bearing seeds according to its kind. So it's plants with seeds that are capable immediately of reproducing themselves. Not just seeds. He said plants with seeds. That I think is important. I hear people say, well, the earth has to be millions of years old because, and then they'll use stuff like this. Well, the light of a distant star takes so many 100 light years to get to Earth, so the Earth has to be millions of years old. I don't believe that at all. I think God created a fully mature Earth. So we've got plants and trees, mature, capable of immediately reproducing themselves. Adam and Eve were mature. God told them to go to replenish the earth right after he created them. Here in Genesis 2, we find that I believe the light from the stars, the light from the sun, the light from anything in outer space was there instantly. It was there, fully mature. And I believe that about the animals. I believe that they were able to reproduce themselves immediately. I just don't think it's any big deal for God to create everything fully mature. If he can create it in the beginning, it's not a big leap in my mind for him to create them fully mature. And I think that's extremely important to understanding that it didn't take millions of years for this stuff to evolve, that he created them mature at the very beginning. Let me see here. It's important because he created here on day 3 the plant life, and when he was going to create the animals and man on day 6, 3 days from now, they would need something to eat. And so, he created that first. He created the trees, and for the reasons I just gave, for food and for shelter, and the plants for eating and whatever. But those had to be created first so man would have something to eat. But that's not the order that evolutionists put this in. They do not put it in this order. Plants first. Plants are not created first in their model. But I think that it's important for us also to notice that if there were millions of years between the creation of plant life and then animal life, that they might not be in existence for man to eat. There's a possibility that some calamity or something might have destroyed that if you buy that evolutionary model. So let me see how did I say this? This is God. As God would create both the land animals and man just 3 days later, who would all need something to eat. If the animals and man had to wait millions of years until the plants matured, they would all died before the plants matured and grew fruit to eat. So I think that it's important to notice that. And then also notice that Moses said that the vegetation made copies of itself. They said they reproduce according to its kind. And this is said 10 times in Genesis chapter 1. That's important. Evolution says something evolved into something else, where 10 times in Genesis 1, the Bible says that each kind reproduced themselves. Totally different. So again, I have a problem with the evolutionary model, and I have a problem with Christians who accept it because you're denying what the scriptures say.
I think this verse destroys evolution.
To me it does, you're right.
If you take the intelligent design creationist versus an evolutionist, and you go verse by verse, their theories can reason to defend what they think up until this verse. Because God created reproducing fruit
That's right.
From the get-go.
From the very beginning.
It can't evolve. It can't reproduce itself on its own. God created it to reproduce. So I think it just destroys the evolutionist theory that it was all happening with
I think that's an absolutely good point. Remember, 10 times I just said, it's in chapter 1, it says, according to its kind. So trees can only reproduce trees, and plants can only reproduce plants. And such it is all the way through with the animal kingdom and man. You'll not find the Bible teaching where one species reproduces itself into another species. And by the way, there was no need. God created it all from the beginning. It's all in place from the beginning. It didn't need to evolve. It's perfect. And that's why I said everything was mature in God's creation, already capable of reproducing itself. And like I said here, this statement refutes the doctrine of macroevolution that teaches that all life forms evolve from lower life forms. According to the scriptures, plants cannot bring forth anything but more plants. Trees can only produce similar trees. Likewise, animals can only reproduce more animals of their own kind. And above all, plant life cannot produce animal life. So, think of all the information that God placed in a single seed. And you and I have plants and trees today because of what God did on day 3 of creation. You and I have plants that have just continued to reproduce themselves over and over again. And I know man has intervened and helped that along sometimes, but the principle itself is true. And when God made the trees, think about this. Because he knows everything, he knew that one of those trees would reproduce itself enough times that it would be used for the cross of Calvary. And why did he allow that? Well, it's because he loves us. That's why, because he loves us. Now, in the scriptures, God makes a clear distinction between plant life and human life. Trees and plants are never referred to as living creatures or living souls. That's important. They're not. They do not have conscious life. And that's one of the things that makes us different. You know, dogs are very smart, but they don't have any conscious life. You know, and that's why sometimes they look in a mirror or reflection off of a glass doorway or window and see another dog. They'll growl at that dog because they don't know it's themselves. They don't have conscious life. Plants do not have conscious life. So tree huggers of America, get over it. It's life created by God, but it's not conscious life. It's not referred to in the scriptures as a living creature or a living soul. Is it alive? Yes, in one sense, but not in its fullest sense. You and I are alive in the fullest sense because we have conscious life. We know ourselves. We know things about ourselves. We have a conscience that convicts us when we do wrong until we sin enough that our conscience no longer bothers us. And Paul described that as being seared with a hot iron. The idea of scar tissue is what it means. And scar tissue is not a good thing. You know that. I hear people all the time, well, I'm going to have another surgery. I got to go in and remove that scar tissue. Why? Because it's not a good thing. And so it's not a good thing when your mind has scar tissue. It means you're no longer convicted about particular sins. And if you're not convicted about them, you'll never repent of them. You don't repent of them, the consequences could be grave. Okay, so day one, he created some general source of light that was not the sun, the moon, or stars, was only temporary. On day two, we saw the separating the waters and inserting in the sky, the expanse, the firmament, if you please. Day three, we saw the creation of plant life, and also we saw the dry ground appeared first, then the plant life. You got to have the dry ground first, Jeff. The dry ground and then the plant life. So, this order is all logical. It's all sequential. It all makes sense to me. I don't particularly understand why this general source of light, but he wanted the day-night cycle to start, so he created some temporary source of light so we'd have this day-night cycle as the Earth rotated. That's all I know. Okay, I'm done. Questions?
Carmen has a question for you.
She does?
Yeah. Same one you asked me in the car the other day. That made my head spin.
It's fine.
No, well, ask him later.